You're listening to Blue Collar CEO, the podcast that's all about helping you build a better, more profitable, and more sustainable home service business. Each week, we'll cover a different topic that will help enable your company to move forward to success. And here's your host, Ryan Redding.
What is up, Blue Collar CEOs? It's Ryan. It is great to be with you today. I am going to have a really passionate conversation with Bob Muller. If you don't know Bob is the president and CEO of Personal Plumbing, Inc. They're a medium-sized service plumbing business in northern San Diego. So this guy has been in the industry for over 30 years. He's weathered a lot of ups and downs. He's seen different economic conditions, different political conditions. And he has a perspective of the industry based on all the changes happening of late. There's a lot of things he's going to be talking about, but one of the things he focuses on a lot is the importance of having a good mentor to help you grow your business. There's so much that this guy brings to the table. I'm going to make sure you also check out his website, personalplumbingsandiego.com. I'll put it in the show notes, but let's introduce you to Bob and let's get going. Bob, I am really glad that we were finally able to wrangle you and get you on the show because I know you're a very busy human. But I guess for those maybe who don't know who you are or what you do, let's maybe just start there, Bob. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Ryan. Specifically, I'm a plumbing contractor. I've been a plumbing contractor for approximately 25 years, maybe just a tad bit longer than that. I've got my feet wet in the contracting industry in the early 90s. Started my plumbing career in the late 80s as a young apprentice going through an apprenticeship program in Oregon was where my roots are. So I'm from the Northwest and grew up in the Oregon area and got my start in the world of plumbing over there. And then took my services to Southern California about 10 years ago. So we've been, learning and growing in the new evolutionary stages of how we run a contracting business here in a new location as well in a new era of how we do business. So that's kind of where, I've kind of transitioned myself into learning that as well. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, the last 10 years.
Well, that's pretty impressive. I mean, all around. And so you're in SoCal. What part of Southern California?
We're specifically in the northern San Diego part of Oceanside, okay, California, and we're in marine country over here in Camp Pendleton area.
It's a beautiful part of the country right there. Yeah. So what I'm curious about, because what's interesting about your experience is that obviously you've been in the trades for a long time. You have a lot of experience. You've seen the business and the industry. You have a perspective that not many people. Maybe not many people listening right now have the perspective that you have. And so you have this different vantage point in the way you approach things. What are some of the biggest maybe differences? Like you made a comment like, hey, it's a new era of things. What are some of the biggest differences that you see from where you are between the way you learn the business, the way you learn the trade, to kind of what you see happening today?
Yeah, specifically, right now we're trying to go fast in the world of contracting by using technology to leverage with our businesses to run quicker, more effectively. But a lot of it's lost in the customer service side of it. So, back in the day, you didn't have a business if you didn't have a reputation or your last name behind it, and people that were looking for you because they knew of your reputation and that you provided really quality service and that, your name mattered back in the day. When I first started, it was way more important to provide really good customer service. And I think that's where we've kind of lost in the industry right now is providing both customer service and being able to go quick in the world in which we live in today. So you got to really be able to marry the two, which is, being able to marry your online presence, how you build a brand and how you build your reputation today, as well as still provide those really high quality level of customer service that is required in order to command the price that you need to run a business, first, and then to be able to continue to grow in your business. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I really like how you kind of marry that there's like this let's call it like a technological efficiency sort of component, but still like this very customer empathy, customer expectations are different now than what they were even 5 years ago, right? It's like the way customers expect to behave with brands is very, very different. What and I'm curious because obviously you're in a coastal city outside of a large metro market. What like I can imagine somebody who like in Iowa or Nebraska, like maybe who's like, flyover country, feels like may all the changes that people see on the coast and all the early technology and all the adoption, all the changes in consumer behavior, it doesn't really impact their business. They might still be running the business on paper. They still might be like guessing their prices or doing T&M for everything. And they might not have this kind of focus on branding. Uh, what might you say to someone who says like, well, that's just because you're in a metro market in California. It's not like that where I am in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, let's say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I can say that you first have to understand, that whether you're in Nebraska or whether you're in California, you still own a business, right? So you still got to define what you own. Do you own a business or do you own a job? And so if you
Mm,
are a person that owns a job, then maybe you're right. Maybe you don't need to worry about your brand, and maybe you don't need to worry about whether you're trying to build something that somebody can one day acquire or have a legacy behind. I don't know. You got to determine why you're in it first. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I don't care where you're at. Every single business is based off of the same principles. Whether you have systems in place, whether you can grow your business based on a brand that you have behind it. And that's important whether you're in Nebraska or whether you're in Ohio or whether you're in New York or whether you're in California. Everybody has the same, responsibility to their business as anybody. So that starts with first having the knowledge of how to run a business and whether you even understand what a business is or whether you just know how to do your job. I mean, most people that start into the contracting business is because they know how to do what specifically the widget that they know how to do is,
sure.
which is
Right, right.
HVAC, or whether they're a plumbing contractor, they know how to do plumbing. They're probably very high level skilled at doing that, but the learning curve of running a business is completely separated from your ability to be able to turn a wrench. So you really need to start with the knowledge aspect and know why you're doing it. So specifically to your question is you better understand what you're trying to do, whether you're in Nebraska or whether you're in California.
I think that's really well said. And I think maybe to take it a step further, I I think no matter where a company lives, this is true if they're in the United States, if they're in Canada, uh, the brands that influence and have reach across markets are getting better and better and better at doing the things that you're talking about,
Yeah.
focusing on brand, focusing on the customer journey. You have companies like Target, Amazon. Hell, I would say Amazon is getting better at what Walmart used to be good at.
Right.
Um, and so these companies are leading the way. And I think once customers experience that, all of a sudden they expect that everywhere they go, right? They expect automated follow up. They expect somebody to like wear booties at their house, for
Yeah.
instance, like because these bigger brands are changing the way that customers expect. And those big brands don't recognize state lines and they don't recognize metropolitan densities. They're everywhere.
Well,
That's
and
true with
and
Starbucks, right?
yeah, truthfully, the big brands are coming to your state whether you like it or not. So, and a lot of it
Right.
has to do with um, it, most of this is private equity anyway. So, like most of these companies are private equity ran companies. The day in which one truck Chuck can go out there and compete
Mm,
with the big private equity groups out there that are purchasing up these service industry type companies, they've got a lot of money behind them. Okay, they got a brand behind them, they got a lot of money behind them, and the more important thing that they have is they got what you don't have, which is job opportunity, right? So if you're a small company, you have to ask yourself, why does somebody want to come to work for me? Okay, how do I attract high level quality talent when I'm not providing booties for them to wear, when I'm not giving them a nice wrap truck to operate out of, when I don't have the best tools for them to work with, when I don't have training for them, when I don't have paid time off for them, when I don't have, ability to, send them through schools. When, if you don't have all those things, well, the big brands do. Okay. So they're not competing for your customer. They're competing for your talent. And if you don't have,
Ooh,
if you don't have, the talent to go out there and send, they don't care. They're going to take your talent and they're going to get your customer. So they're not competing for your talent or for your customers. That's the biggest mistake that small businesses, that they start with, is that they think that if I just undercut the big company out there, if I just, charge prices half the price of the big guy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take his business. No, you're not. You're not going to grow your business. You don't have a business, and you're not going to compete with these guys. So I would say, first, if you're a high level guy that wants to, run and operate a business, you have to play at the same starting point as these guys. You got to price your products the same way as they do. You have to be able to acquire the customers that they do, and you got to be able to start providing those services in your companies that they do. So if you're not doing these things, you're not a business.
Yeah, or you won't be in business very long. That's for sure. And to your point, also, you mentioned this as a throwaway comment, but for a lot of people, they do get stuck in the difference between like having a job versus having a business. And some guys can get really caught between the two, because when you have a job, you can be busy, right? You can feel like you're busy, but you're not profitable. You can't take time off, and you're just breaking your back just to make ends meet. Are there ever times where you kind of sit back and kind of reflect on the way you see the landscape unfolding now, with all these big firms buying up these smaller companies and trying to consolidate their resources, and the way technology is coming in and the way consumers expect to interact? And you kind of reflect back to the business you grew up in and you learned, 30 years ago, and you go, this isn't even the same thing. Like, is there ever a point you just kind of stop and step back and be like, what's happening here?
Yeah, 100%. I reflect on that all the time, and I look at the changes in which how I've done business from back in the early 90s, when we had to advertise in Yellow Pages. If you had the resources to even advertise in the Yellow Pages at that time, realistically everything was word of mouth back in those days. So it was word of mouth, and if you got yourself into the Yellow Pages, you had to really perform, because you couldn't afford that $20,000-$30,000 a month budget to be in that little square spot at the very bottom of the page, trying to acquire your customers. So for guys that have never had to struggle with that, to start with, you have all of the advantages in the world right now, because realistically, your online presence let's put it in perspective. So if you're calling me, my company, Personal Plumbing, and you look at me online, you don't know if I'm a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, because I don't have a storefront that I come through, right? So you don't know whether I'm a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse with the great chefs and great menus and great service and great, customer, experience, right? The customer experience is from the technician's standpoint of when they get sent to the house. Okay, so you're not coming through my storefront. You're seeing me in my online presence. So I have the same advantage if I'm a small company as a big company. So you have to be able to still provide those same services that a big company is going to provide, because your online presence will look the same. If your website is your online presence. Your reviews are your online presence. And so if you're growing your reviews and you're growing your ability to perform the services the same way and charging the same prices, then you can still grow. You can grow your company. But it's such a big difference the way that we used to do business compared to the way that we can do business now. So if you wanted to start a business today, it's easier than ever. It's all the technology is running businesses for you if you're just leveraging the businesses and using people that have done it before you. I would say don't navigate this without a mentor. If you don't have somebody that's done it before that you're not learning from, you got to learn both how to be a good service provider as well as a business owner. So you better have a good mentor behind you.
I love that you're drawing the distinction because I think you're right. I think people are very good at knowing their skills, like whatever it is that they sling the wrench with, but learning the aspects of the business. And that's true with like different stages of business, right? So running a $1 million company is different than running a $10 million, and it's
Yeah.
different than $100 million company. And I love the way you talk about it's important to have mentorship sort of roles. Okay, so here's a question for you. Man, I didn't think I'd get into here. Hopefully, I don't piss anyone off by asking this question, because I don't want to. There's a lot of people on social media platforms who are really good at pumping their ego, at pumping their chest, and drawing a lot of attention, that I know a lot of people look to. And sometimes I see like mixed reaction and mixed reception, right? Sometimes the information put out is really helpful. Sometimes it's less so. When somebody's looking for a mentor, are you talking specifically about, hey, find someone who you idolize, who takes up a lot of oxygen on Facebook and just copy them? Or are you looking for somebody who like shares intentional time that they can teach you how to read financials? Like, what is it that is important to you when you say things like, hey, get a mentor?
Yeah, well, all of those things I would say. But first off is like for me specifically, a guy like Al Levy, who's a guru in our industry that is spent many years putting together the systems and processes, spent hundreds of thousands of his own dollars putting all these processes together and willing to share the information. It's people that don't seek information are the people that will fall behind, right? The guys that think they know it all, that they know how to just, hey, I'm a great plumber. I can go out there and all I got to do is be a great plumber. No, you got to be a great business owner, and you need to know how to handle personalities in your company. You need to be able to be a good leader. You need to be able to solve for all the things that you're not good at. So if you're not good at finance or accounting, you better have somebody in your company that is. Or hire out somebody that can do that for you on within the company dynamic that you've set up. But yeah, specifically for mentors, I mean, there's groups out there. There's a lot of mentor groups out there that just are for business owners. So if you're not trying to be industry specific as for a mentor, there's a lot of really good business people out there that can help you with it, because it doesn't matter what business you're in. Every single business has to operate the same way with systems, processes, and procedures. And if you don't have those things set up in your company, if your company needs you every single day, then you don't have a business. If you can't take a 2-week vacation and still make the same money that you made when you were there, then you don't have a business. You just have a job.
Yeah, I 100% would agree with that. And you're right. There are people who know business, right? They might not know plumbing, they might not know HVAC, they might not know pest control, whatever, but they know business. And there's only so many forces that exist in the world on all businesses of all types. And if you find someone who knows business, um, it, it's usually going to work out in your favor. Do you like, so for you, do you have a board of directors or anything that you go to and pick their brains on? Do you utilize any sort of like group input
Well,
like that?
so I was one of those same guys that didn't take my own advice for a long time. I thought I could just do this and navigate this for a long time, and I've outlasted a lot of people. I mean, I've done it for a long time, but I had to start really taking the advice of other people and start hiring people that I don't know. I'm not saying really hire, but at least pay for their services. Guys like Al Levy, who I've worked with. I've gone to plenty of big conventions and seeked people that are business mentors, and I've talked with them, and I get myself plugged in and connected to those type of people, specifically people that are just good at business. I mean, if you look at a guy like Ken Goodrich, from Ghetto Plumbing. He puts out tons of content that you can seek that type of knowledge from, and there's the list goes on and on of people out there that are willing to share their information, and that's kind of what the spot I'm kind of in my journey right now. I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've lasted in this industry for a long time. I mean, I don't have it all figured out, but I can definitely mentor and give people advice. I mean, I've done it. So, it's one of those things where you just got to seek other like-minded individuals.
So here's a question. Oh, so here's the inverse side of this equation of I can see you probably know people like this who are really cocky 20 something year olds who feel like they went to a workshop or they saw a guy on stage or they went to whatever and they know it all. And someone who's been in the industry for 30 years can't possibly know what they need to do or help them. What what sort of words of advice or caution might you say to someone who maybe doesn't have the capacity to understand the value that having a larger perspective brings to helping them navigate today's business climate?
Yeah, I would say first of all, you have to look at uh, how many seasons have you gone through, right? Like guys like Tom Brady, who have played at the high level of football for as long as he has. Think of how many seasons and how many times that he's been to some of these big events and these big games that he's gone to that he knows that, hey, when this happens, I need to do this, right? You get a young guy out there that's done, one or two things. He's killing it because he knows how to get an influence audience out there that is throwing money at him, but you don't understand how to take care of your back end. You don't know your numbers. You don't know that your EBITDA matters way more than the Ferrari that you put your EBITDA into, right? You have no business value anymore because you've spent all of your money on the shiny objects out there. These young guys out there that aren't building a brand and aren't building a business and aren't building something to last, those are the people that I would say that are going to be part of the statistics of the small businesses that just don't make it. And so
Yeah, which is really dire. Like what?
Yeah, I would say you just got to understand seasons, and if you're not seasoned and you haven't gone through it, if you don't have a 10-year worth of history of being able to reflect off of, then you got to be seeking somebody that does.
I actually really like the sports metaphor of like having the reps, having the seasons, like having that experience makes you better equipped to navigate things. It's funny it reminds me of oh gosh, it was years ago when a lot of people don't know this. So when I was working on my private pilot's license, like in my mid-20s, somebody told me when looking for like an instructor to teach you how to fly an airplane, it's really tempting to ask people like, have you had any accidents? Have you had any collisions? And look for the people who you go, nope, they've had no issues. They fly perfectly all the time. They must clearly be better pilots because they have no problems. And someone said, oh, no, 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 no. You want to have someone teach you who's had catastrophic engine failure in flight and walked away. Like you want the people who have had the bad experience, learn from the bad experience, survive the bad experience. Those are the best teachers, not the ones who don't have any of those wounds, don't have any of those lessons, and everything's always gone easy for them. It reminds me a lot of this, right? Of having someone who's weathered different economic conditions and different political conditions and different changes in the industry and different changes in consumer behavior and expectations and different models that seem to be working. Those people can add a significant amount of value to how you understand making decisions now. It doesn't mean that you have to do exactly what someone's saying, but that context is helpful to help you make a better, smarter, more profitable decision at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why that like the average age of our United States presidents have always been about 67 years old, and better. And there's a reason why you got to be of a certain age to be running,
Yeah.
what we call the our own infrastructure here of the United States, right? So it's just like a business. You got to have some experience to do it. And so if you're a young guy out there just trying to start your business, it's not that you shouldn't have a starting point, but you should have a reason why you're starting your business, and you should have an understanding of what it actually takes to run a business. And if you don't, you should have somebody that's mentoring you to do that. It really, in order to start a business, a lot of guys just start out, throwing a few tools in a broken down van and start servicing people and call themselves a business owner. And so it starts that way in a lot of occasions. And I'm not going to say that it didn't start that way for me. It started that way for me. But over time, you have to, if you're going to last in this industry or last in business, you have to start understanding what it takes to run a business. And a lot of that has to do with being able to understand how to leverage your business with being able to acquire capital to grow your business. Businesses don't grow without having debt. The best run companies out there have a ton of debt, and they know how to use that debt to make more money. And so it's like with those guys out there that are afraid to spend money on growing their company are the ones that are going to stay small. If you don't make $1 million a year, borrow $1 million. Now you're making $1 million. So I'm telling you that if you don't know how to use $1 million, that's because you don't know how to run a business. So if you have $1 million of capital thrown into your business, if you're doing it right, you should be able to take 5 times on your investment. Now you're making $5 million a year. So it's like the math is simple. It's you just got to understand how to use your resources.
Yeah, and it's funny to get into like financial management. And we've had guests on the show before previously who talk about that, because I think so many people, again, because they don't know business, they bring their understanding of personal finance into the business. Right.
Yeah.
And that's their level. Hell, I just talked to someone a couple weeks ago, and they're navigating financial decisions just like they're managing a kitchen budget. You're like, this is not the same thing. And if companies are, let me say it this way: this is not financial advice. Talk to your CPA.
Right.
However, if somebody understands how debt works, how cash flow works, how debt can be leveraged, they should absolutely take advantage of every possible tool and resource to maximize the return on their investment. If somebody historically has really cash management skills, like really poor cash management skills, like you give them $100, they'll spend 150. Okay, maybe avoid the debt. Like maybe the Dave Ramsey thing is totally fine for you. Just don't expect to have a really strong growing business, because it's really hard. It's really hard to scale a business without leveraging debt correctly. And that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But because it's really important.
It ties into like the start of our conversation of, the difference between today's generation of business compared to yesterday's generation of businesses, the ones that now are competing online, because our businesses are ran by the consumer out there giving us the reviews, right? So if you're not on Google, killing it and crushing it by putting a lot of your advertising dollars into Google, and having a strong, 5 to 700 review, 5-star, 4.5 to 5-star review rating, with a lot of reviews, you're not getting hired. Okay. So you have to leverage today's way of doing business, because the consumers have all the power right now by leaving you either a 1-star review or a 2-star review. And if you don't want to play in that world to where you're afraid, that just means that you don't know how to perform those services that people are looking for. You're afraid to send your technician over there that is not going to be able to perform a 5-star type service. So that's why you don't want to compete with Google. You don't want that online presence, and you don't care.
You want to sweep as much as you can under the rug.
Yeah.
Like, don't look here, and instead of like dealing with the root of the issue to begin with.
Yes, and that's the dynamic that we're facing right now. Is every single time that you go into a customer's house, you have that review that somebody's going to be leaving on you on some platform, and that's what's building your business.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I feel like so many people are afraid of asking for a review because they don't want people to say bad things. You're like, you're totally missing the point here. Like this is the gold mine.
Yeah.
Companies who understand that are making a buttload.
Yeah.
Clearly, Bob, like you're obviously passionate. You've done this a few times, so like you have some personal lessons and some personal motivation that kind of weighs in to like the way you feel and the way you believe about business and the business climate and things in general. If somebody is feeling frustrated, or maybe they feel stuck in transitioning from the old way to the new way, what are what are 2 or 3 things that maybe you found helpful for you that you would encourage someone else to consider also?
Well, for specifically reading, getting yourself plugged into, and with, you don't even have to read these days. I mean, you just go onto YouTube and you're going to get all the information that you need. But plug into how businesses work, how businesses operate. Get yourself start with just understanding money, understanding leverage, understanding brand building. Because you got to understand all the different avenues that it takes to run a successful business, which is brand recognition, reputation, advertising, and sales. Right. So if you don't have and this is a whole nother conversation. I know we're probably going to run along here, but and I apologize for that. But
You're good.
sales is a big aspect of your industry you're in, whether you believe so or not. I mean, yeah, you're a service provider, but every single business is driven by sales. And most of the technician companies out there are all like, well, no, my technicians are not salesmen. Well, I'm sorry, but yes, they are. They're selling you, they're selling your brand, they're selling your services, they're selling your products. And if they're not good at selling, you're going to stay stuck in below $1 million a year. You can't grow something if somebody's not selling something.
Right.
And you got to have something to market with, and that's a brand.
Yeah, and the power of the brand, like I think so many people don't realize how important the brand is, but it makes, especially when the brand is strong, it makes everything else easier. It really does. It makes selling your services at a premium easier. It makes customer acquisition costs can be lower. That brand is a really, really powerful tool that I
Yeah,
think so
100%.
few people.
And that's what
Yeah.
I've always said from the beginning is like guys and I'll use your example of a small guy in Nebraska that wants to compete with some of the bigger guys. Well, again, you don't have to be competing with the 1,000 other plumbing companies or other service providers of whatever industry you're in. You don't have to compete with the thousands of them. You just got to compete with the top 3 or 4. So when people say, "Well, how do you compete with with the huge market you're in?" I said, "Well, I don't. I don't have to compete if I'm number one. If you Google me, I'm number one in the 5 things I'm trying to be number one in. So I'm not competing with anybody; they're competing with me. So
Right.
you can do that organically. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. You just gotta put intentional reasons behind building your brand and building your presence, and it's all done very very easily if you understand marketing and brand. So that's what I would say. Start learning that.
If somebody, Bob, had maybe questions that they wanted to reach out to you and maybe specifically ask you about their experience, maybe they're in Nebraska, they don't have access to a high quality mentor. Is there a good way that somebody could reach out to you, pick your brain from time to time, and get your take on things?
Yeah, 100%. So, we're easily found online with our online presence through Google, through Facebook, through LinkedIn. You can specifically, find me on LinkedIn through the Personal Plumbing brand. You can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm happy to work with anybody that has questions. I mean, this is what I do. I mean, I work with a lot of young guys. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but I can definitely tell you that I can probably point you in the right direction or give you a few little tweaks. And it's not to say that I don't even seek, my own mentors. I do have my own mentors that I work with, and I still pick their brains. So we're all in it together, and we grow. We grow a lot more through relationships. Relationships are the big currency these days. You're gonna do a lot better with relationships than you are with $1,000 in your pocket that you don't know how to spend.
Oh, that's really, really well said. Bob, I clearly we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours and just still scratch the surface on what you can bring to the table. I'll make sure that personalplumbingsandiego.com is linked in the show notes if anyone wants to hit you up that way. Obviously on Facebook. Um, Clearly, you love helping people. You love making the trades as a whole better, and you have a lot of experience under your belt of showing that you've done this a few times. So I'm really, really grateful and humbled, honestly, that you would take the time to come and join our show and share just a tidbit of what your passion and capability and knowledge is. So thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate the invite, and it was my pleasure to hopefully bring a little bit of value.
This episode was hosted by Ryan Redding, author of the book on digital marketing for plumbing and HVAC contractors, and founder of Levergy, the digital marketing solution for serious home service companies. You can subscribe to Blue Collar CEO on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit us online at BlueCollar.CEO and find us on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another awesome episode. See you soon.